Before we get going, I recently put out episode 3 of the NBA Plus Stuff podcast. Talked about the Celtics and where they rank in the Eastern Conference and if they have a real chance to make the finals. And then I also talked about my expectations for Eminem's new Revival album with a release date that is constantly changing. The link to that is in the top comment of this video. So anyway, the Houston Rockets made some moves this offseason. Traded for Chris Paul, signed PJ Tucker, Luke Richard, and Mbah a Moute. Looking to improve offensively as well as defensively and give themselves a real chance against the Golden State Warriors. Currently 14-4 on the season, first in offense and 8th in defense. And that defense is going to be a thing that I talk about a lot in this video because that's a big deal. Last season they were, They were 18th in defense last season to go with second in offense. And I think we talk about just, is that defense good enough to where they can really be a team that can go at the Warriors and have a chance against them in a 7-game series? Can they potentially be even the 1 seed in the Western Conference, given that Golden State is currently behind Houston for number 2? So let's just talk about the defense first and foremost, because that's the biggest thing. I think, honestly, number 1, we just have to look at their rebounding. Their defensive rebounding percentage this season, Houston, is 81%. Last season, their defensive rebounding percentage was 76%. So, I mean, you just see basically a 5% increase, and that means less offensive rebounds for opposing teams, less second chance opportunities, second chance buckets, potentially getting fouled off of an offensive rebound, or just creating extra possessions for yourself. So immediately, that's going to make you a better defensive team. I think a lot of that has to go to Clint Capella, who's just gotten better as a rebounder. Last season, Capella's rebounding percentage was 25%. This year, it's 35%. The defensive rebounding percentage, I should say. I think PJ Tucker also has something to do with this. Tucker is averaging 6.5 boards a game. So the rebounding is good, but I also mentioned PJ Tucker. I mean, he's a big difference for this, no doubt. And Tucker, I mean, in the role player video that's coming out, hopefully today, if I have enough time, I do talk about PJ Tucker, and I do talk about the defensive impact that he has made for these Rockets. His plus-minus is through the roof. His net rating is beautiful. Every single lineup that he's in is very positive. And defensively, I mean, the dude's strong as hell. He can defend a few perimeter players. I would trust him on point guards and shooting guards, but he's also strong enough and still agile enough to have a real advantage over some small forwards, power forwards. I've seen them occasionally play him at the center position. I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing. That might just be a counter to Golden State's lineup where Draymond is at center. But yeah, PJ Tucker has just been awesome. But Luke Richard and Mbah a Moute at the same time, his plus-minus is through the roof as well. And Mbah a Moute, you just have these two guys, right? You have Tucker and Moute, who are just so good at defending a few positions, and they can also play a few positions themselves. You can play them both at power forward, which just creates a whole lot of matchup problems for opposing teams. You combine those two with Trevor Ariza, and suddenly you've got 3 guys who can really switch a few positions, and D'Antoni is constantly moving certain guys in and out of the lineup, and there are times when 2 of these guys are in the game, potentially even all 3 of these guys are in the game. And then you have those 3 in there with Clint Capella, and you're talking about a really quality defensive team around James Harden. And then you can also filter in Chris Paul into those things because he's healthy now after only playing 4 games. There's just a lot of defensive players on this team. And even if there are times when you're going to have James Harden and Ryan Anderson in the game, who are 2 under-average defenders, you can just balance that out with the rest of these guys. So just better defenders across the board on top of being a better defensive rebounding team, yeah, it makes sense. And do I think Houston can maintain these things? Honestly, yes, because all the guys who are playing good defense for them, they've been good defenders their entire career. So I don't see a reason as to why they would drop off. I mean, I guess the only guy who could have potential drop off is Chris Paul, just because he's 32, has played a whole lot of minutes, and he's got a high responsibility on offense, but I mean, CP3 is always bringing the effort defensively, so yeah, I mean, they're 8th in defense right now. I guess maybe it could drop a little bit just because that's tough to do, being top 10 in both offense and defense, but who the hell knows? Maybe they'll keep it there. They are also forcing a few more turnovers a game. I think their steals as well as their blocks are up by like 1 each after last season, which isn't a huge difference, but I mean, it's a little bit of one, so yeah. Now, if we talk about the offense, which of course they already had no problems with, they were, second in offensive rating last season? This season, they are number 1 in the NBA, basically scoring the same amount of points per 100 possessions as last season, around 114, shooting 44 3-pointers a game, shooting about 36% on those shots. And when I talk about how versatile they are defensively, they're also super versatile on offense as well. Because you have Eric Gordon, who can play off of Chris Paul and James Harden, but he can also facilitate the offense himself. Ryan Anderson with his outside shots, and then Trevor Ariza doing what he can do, just spotting up, shooting around 37% from 3 this year. He's always been a very good corner 3-point shooter. And then James Harden and Chris Paul, where at times both of them are in the game, at times only one of them is in the game, and they both just constantly make the right decisions with the ball in their hand. It's just kind of unfair with how much versatility this team has, because they really have like 4 power forward options, right? Trevor Ariza, Luke Mbah-a-Moute, PJ Tucker, and Ryan Anderson. 3 of those guys being quality defenders who can be more athletic than a lot of 4s, and then Ryan Anderson, who could just space the floor out really well. But if we do talk about PJ Tucker and Mbah-a-Moute a bit, offensively, those guys have been everything that they could ask for, Houston, because of course you acquired these 2 for their defense, but Tucker, I mean, shooting 35% on threes while taking about 4 a game, and Mbah-a-Moute shooting 38% from 3 while taking 3 a game, and Mbah-a-Moute has also had a few ball handling moments this season where Houston will run their initial action, which a lot of the time is some form of a pick and roll, and then Mbah-a-Moute will either end up on a smaller player. Well, he'll have a smaller player defending him, or maybe his defender will be off balance just a little bit, and Mbah-a-Moute has actually taken him off the bounce and done a few things. And in the video I made a little while back now where I talked about the biggest question marks for each team in the West, my thing was, how much offense are the Rockets going to get out of Tucker and Mbah-a-Moute? And the answer so far has been they've gotten enough. And given what those 2 can do for you on defense, as long as they're just giving you something offensively, then you got it. Now, in the playoffs, teams are still going to dare these 2 to beat them, and it's going to be a question to see if they can do it. But as far as the regular season has gone, it's been very good so far. If we can talk a little bit about Houston's offensive sets, I mean, it's what you expect it to be. It's Chris Paul and James Harden pick and rolls, and either the big man gets open for a lob, which a lot of the times is Clint Capella, or it's Nene rolling to the rim, or there's going to be a switch and then Harden or Chris Paul has a big man on them. But what I like is some of the extra little things they've done out of the pick and roll where, so like let's say James Harden's getting a screen from Clint Capella, they'll have that at the top of the key, but then they'll have like PJ Tucker or Trevor Ariza set another screen just underneath that one. It's not really a double screen. It's like an additional screen, if you will. And, you know, it just forces the defense to either be forced to switch, or a lot of the time it ends up with the guy setting the extra screen getting a wide open 3-pointer at the top of the key. And given that you have Harden and Chris Paul, I mean, those 2 are always going to spot the open guy. They've also had moments where they'll have like Ryan Anderson set the screen for Harden, and then they'll have the extra screener be Clint Capella, and then Capella, in the split moment that the defense is going like what the hell's going on, Capella will cut to the basket and get himself an easy alley-oop opportunity. So I mean, the offense is still pick and rolls, but there's like little extra stuff to each one that forces them to really be tough to defend, and they're already a really tough team to defend. Chris Paul's only played in 4 games, and their offense is still best in the league. So once CP3 just gets more time in with this roster, then these guys could be really special on offense. I mean, they already are special on offense. And then you combine that with being maybe a top 10 defense because of these additions they've made, and suddenly you got a really good roster. And again, like, let's just speak to the versatility of this team. Between Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Luke Richard, and Mbah a Moute, Nene, as well as Clint Capella being your two centers, there's just so many options on this team, and they're definitely a scary one. Do I think they have a chance against the Warriors? I think they can definitely make Golden State care. I could see them pushing the Warriors to at least a Game 6, but we're also only about 20 games into the season, so we can't dive too much into that just at this very moment. But yeah, I mean, I think Houston's definitely the second best team in the league, and the Warriors, they definitely need to be paying attention to what the Rockets are doing. So that's going to do it. Before I get out of here, once again, new podcast. Find that below in the top comment. And why the hell were the Thunder so difficult to score against in this thing?